I saw this and I wanted to respond to this one. So first, Black Myth Wukong fans are really the Swifties of the gaming this year. So okay, so first of all, you're using Swifties as a negative, and that's really strange to me because I don't see the Swifties as a negative. I see them as a positive. Empowerment and grief are the two things that you really always have to be careful about how you handle, because everybody approaches it differently. And I think how the Swifties handle their empowerment is fine. It's great. It's not for me. It's not for a bunch of people in my family, but like my nieces and their daughters are all super big into it, and it's super great to see them pull together and share their experience with other women. So let's not use Swifties as a negative with me. The reaction to their favorite not getting an award and the developer arrogance are astoundingly childish. Let's kill this effing meme right now, okay? I don't know about the people there. So first of all, the Wukong team and the CEO, they've got some allegations of actually not sexual misconduct, but just really like boys club kind of BS stuff and things like that. And that's crap. That's bad. Call them out for that. But he had written a letter where he said, he wasted his time going to the event because he's coming home empty. He's making a joke. He won 2 awards. One gaming website mistranslated it and it went everywhere instead of the context that he was making a joke. He was making a self-deprecating joke. He was having fun. He was being goofy, but he's from a different culture, which we're going to talk about in a minute here about culture, because I talked about it the other day. He made a joke. And then one developer, who I blocked for other reasons, but yet similar reasons, called out that someone on the team was crying when they didn't win. Jet lag, they're there, one person on the team crying, and all of a sudden, like they robbed a bank. Why? Why this group? It's almost like they're xenophobic against the Chinese. Which the other person who brought this up originally, I got a history of that. But so, like, why? Why get all this bent out of shape about this developer? Right? I find that kind of gross. So in the other video that I talked about game developers around the world and how we're all very similar, someone's like, oh yeah, classic Westerner, just exploiting the Asians. And that's not what I said, and that's not what's happening. They've since deleted that comment. Because the thing is, in China, they're making games. I mean, Genshin Impact may be the biggest one that first hit the stage, but Wukong they're pulling from their own mythology and making games, and now are they being played around the world, or are they just being played mainly in China? I'm not sure about that one. But like Tencent, NetEase, there's big gaming companies in China. We're not exploiting China to make games. They're making games of their own. They're of their own, right? And I remember I once gave a talk in China and just decided to go off on a rant a little bit, but trying to explain Hollywood didn't become Hollywood by trying to be somebody else. They became Hollywood by being themselves, and then other people wanting to be that. And I think Wukong is a great example of that, right? Like they just expressed into who they are, and then a bunch of people played it and bought it. And that was a joke. That was a joke. It was a joke. He talks about other stuff in there and whatever, and you can get mad about that. But man, like this whole attacking of that is a joke. And it's, to me, really weird because we do this thing where around the world we make games and they're all tied together. So now we have a big Asian influence in the Gaming Awards this year, and partially that's because, see my previous video about gaming news sites, is there's a lack of gaming news sites, so they have a jury that picks the games and then votes on them. And those juries are composed of press, because that's where Jeff Keighley comes from. So that's why when you try to tell me that it's all rigged, you're full of crap, because it is. I know the people doing it, and they're all from these different websites and news organizations. Well, the problem is there's less Western news organizations, so they added some Asian news organizations, as well as some Asian games were really big. So now these are Chinese developed in China. Now sometimes, yeah, Tencent invests in companies that I'm friends with, right? Actually, they've bought people's games or companies I'm friends with, right? Same with NetEase. Like these are powerhouses. These aren't backwoods kids, and especially in mobile, they're killing it. So they are a powerful house, and for some people, they feel threatened because they're like, hey, they've got a lot of people working on these games. They don't pay them well. They overworked them to 666, work 6 days a week. It gotta be more than 666. Maybe it's 10, something. I don't know. It's working a lot. But that's the culture there. Well, but if you're in Italy and you look at the U.S. culture, are we overworked and crazy? Because our culture is one of different work ethic than the Italians, but it's not like the Italians are lazy. And I'm using just that as a representative of like more of the Western or European kind of laid back, do your job, live your life, where in the US it's more your life is your job. Like, so are we exploitive? Maybe. Is China even more exploitive? Maybe, right? But there's this whole digging out of it. And so out of this, I've seen a lot of developers kind of be a little xenophobic. And it's weird because they're picking on this and they're picking on that this one company has, again, a bunch of sexist stuff in the back. But we just gloss over, like, here, I shouldn't talk about this. Saudi Arabia executes gay people. But yet people take game funding from them. We move esports there. We pretend that's not happening. We just, hey, let's look over there. And hey, all those people, this weird building, this whole city they're building in the desert, and the 10,000 workers that died building it, they're not real people. We'll just skip that one, right? But yet, they're funding a bunch of stuff. It's gross. It's gross, right? It is gross. And as we talk about this stuff, it's really easy to throw up these kind of memes or these kind of cliches about like exploiting the East or whatever. And they're just bullshit. And they're not talking about the real thing to be talking about. They're not talking about the real issues going on, right? Like, can you make a giant free-to-play shooter with endless content in the West anymore? Can you afford to make something like that, right? This is the thing that we've been talking about lately. It's all tied together, right? Of like the finals or Spectre Divide or some of the other shooters that have come on and started fading because they just couldn't maintain people, and partially they couldn't maintain people because they just don't have this giant amount of content. And in these other countries, you see with cheaper labor, they're able to get these giant amount of content, and they're not being exploited by the West. They're being exploited by the Chinese for the Chinese. So you decide, right? Because again, you could be also mad at Americans for working too hard or too much. And that's not to say anybody is lazy or anything, right? It's just different ways culture approaches it. And it's different ways, like with this, he was being self-deprecating and it was written in Chinese and some people chose to not translate it correctly because, hey, let's use AI to translate it instead. And then I saw developers like, he shouldn't have made the joke. Yeah, he should have. What? Yeah, he should have. He should be himself that way. Right? Yeah, he shouldn't be himself the other way. The other stuff, yeah, we should bring that of like, don't be sexist pig and women play games, and make games. But let's not do this other thing, right? Because it fits your narrative. And it's just really weird to watch that. And while they gloss over the narrative of others, and it's not a zero-sum game, it doesn't mean you support one thing because you don't call it out when you're calling out other things. But still, it's complicated. And it's going to get more complicated because I'm really interested to see what the new Battlefield is, partially just because what can DICE do in Sweden that essentially got ripped off recently? I want to mention the game because it's such a rip-off of Battlefield, which, I mean, whatever, I guess, right? But like, how do we compete against that? How does anyone compete? And as a player, I just get a bunch of free stuff. It's a bunch of gacha game stuff. I don't engage with that. So, but this is a complicated problem that's amplifying the problems that already exist inside the game space. And I'm not gonna have this kind of crap. People can be excited, and it's art. I don't like that they're competition at all. But let's not take some BS to someone who's xenophobic started spreading and kind of amplify that, okay? Not here.